I'm good. Where are you looking? You look like you're looking to the side or something.
Yeah, I've got. I'm trying to put notes up on the computer so I can read off them. But I'm looking at you currently, and then if I
Oh,
look this
okay.
way, I'm looking at the notes. Does that look like I'm looking at you, or
No, not really, but that's okay. It's so
okay?
hard with video calls, isn't it? Like, it just never looks like you're looking at the person, but you are.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm good today. Yeah, it's been a good week for me. How about you?
yeah, good. Nothing. Just yeah, doing some more research and all that for today's talk a little bit, which is good. Just learning new terminologies and just building new understandings, I think.
Yeah. Um, do you want to introduce the animal in our thumbnail?
Sure. Oh, now the screen's gone all funny because I've changed it. Hang on a second. Okay, so the animal in our thumbnail is Annie the donkey from Freedom Hill Sanctuary. She was born to a rescue mum, um, and over the past 2 years, I suppose she's um, like grown a bond with all the other donkeys and mum. Um, and it's her second birthday. It was her second birthday 4 days ago, so that would have been Tuesday. I think that's 4 days ago, Tuesday. So happy birthday to Annie.
Where did you say Annie lives?
Freedom Hill.
Oh, she's at Freedom Hill. Okay.
Yeah.
Freedom Hill is a local sanctuary to us, in case people didn't know. Yeah, nice. Happy birthday to Annie. 2 years, 2 years old,
We can do
and
birthday
hopefully,
claps.
looking forward to many more years of a well looked after. I guess if you could say anything, that at least Annie will be living a well looked after life at Freedom Hill Sanctuary.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't really, in Australia, see many donkeys being exploited. It's not really part of our culture, maybe, but particularly overseas, like it would suck to be a donkey. Yeah, so it's good
Mm,
that she has a home now, someone
for
to look
sure.
after her and all that.
For sure. All right. Our topic today is the definition of veganism and what it used to mean, what it means now, doesn't need a rebrand, what's kind of, we're going to just be talking about what really is kind of going on at the moment with veganism and the meaning of it, the concept of it in modern society. So, did you have in mind a place where you wanted to start with today, Mark?
Um, well, I just had some questions down, trying to be more organized, but I didn't have a particular order.
Okay. How
Um,
about we start with a bit of a history of veganism and I guess the word vegan and the definition of it. I have done a little bit of research about this throughout the years, but I could still get some things wrong, but hopefully it's not intentional if I do. But I believe that the word vegan was kind of coined in the 1940s by a man named Donald Watson and apparently his wife Dorothy as well. He probably gets all the glory, but I'm sure she contributed as well. And they met with a few other people in the UK, I think, somewhere. I don't know what country. And they got together and they coined the word vegan, which was, I guess, at the time used to describe someone who not only didn't eat meat, like, vegetarianism was already around, the word vegetarian was already around, and that obviously describes people who just don't eat meat. But they wanted a word for people who also didn't want to consume animal products in other ways, like dairy and eggs and things like that. So they coined the word vegan to describe people like them who also didn't want to participate in other forms of animal use. So I suppose they just found that the word vegetarian wasn't really cutting it anymore and they needed something else. So I think the word vegan was the start of the word vegetarian and the end of the word vegetarian. So VE and then VEGAN. So that was in the 1940s, I think. But then apparently they still kind of, like a few years later, I think it was Leslie Cross, who was part of I think they kind of called themselves the Vegan Society. I think that was the beginning of the Vegan Society. And Leslie Cross, who was part of that, pointed out that they still didn't really have like a definition for vegan. In their minds, they kind of had an idea of maybe what it was, but they hadn't actually written out a formal definition. So they came up with one. And I think I'm just looking at my source at the moment. I think originally Leslie Cross's definition still in the 1940s was like, Leslie's suggestion was the principle of the emancipation of animals from exploitation by man. So that was the definition for veganism that Leslie Cross suggested.
At
Hey,
risk of
by the way, we have a couple of viewers. I can see the comments. So I'll try and talk and read the comments and show the comments all at the same time.
yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We've got some people from Carson's channel, so that's awesome.
Yeah, we've never had people comment things. So if you have some questions to help us along the way or any tips, feel free.
Yeah.
Would it be too much to attempt to share screen and put the definition up? Or is that maybe a technical problem? We can try it on our own.
Well, I'm currently reading it off my phone, so I would have to like go onto Google and find the website, and I think that would be a bit messy, so I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to read it out. So anyway, yes, so Leslie Cross suggested that the definition of veganism should be the principle of the emancipation of animals by exploitation, from exploitation by man. So I find that interesting because I think that just shows that originally it was about exploitation. Like the word exploitation was the main part of that original definition suggestion. And so I think that's really interesting. And then anyway, I guess over the years it was kind of maybe redefined and refined. And then according to this source, I'm on the website called EarthSave. I think they've done some research from the Vegan Society. Since 1988, apparently, until present day, the Vegan Society defines veganism as a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So that's the first part of it. I often just use that first part when I'm defining it to people, but I'll continue reading the rest of it that they've written. And by extension, promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. There's a lot to unpack there. It's quite a long definition now that the Vegan Society has up on their website. And there's definitely a lot to unpack in that. So, yeah, I guess we could start there by unpacking that. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, my first question that I think is an important start is what do you think they intended veganism to be at the time? Because I think a lot of people get bogged down in the many things that they said over the decades about veganism and defining it this way and that way. But what do you think, in essence, they were attempting to accomplish?
I think that it seems like it was always about exploitation and kind of being anti-animal exploitation. I think that they realized that what happens to animals that are consumed for meat is really not so different from animals used for anything in our society. Like, I think that they realized that the use of animals was exploitative and generally cruel. And so I think that they were trying to establish something, a movement maybe, or a group that kind of rejected that. So I think it has always kind of been about not just trying to reduce suffering or animal cruelty, but I think it has always been about recognizing that exploitation of animals is a morally questionable thing to do, and they were trying to reject that. That's what I think, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think maybe the initial summation of what they wrote about veganism was quite directed at that exploitation, as you said, and very animal focused. I think there's the second definition that you read out, the current vegan society definition, uh, wavers slightly. Like it moves. I think it tries to just explain a little more, kind of maybe what they mean, but I think often it can be taken out of context. And I agree with Contrarian 420 that there's now two camps. I think there's one camp that kind of focuses on that exploitation side, and there's the other camp that focuses on animal-free alternatives to the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. So I think there's that focus on the particularly humans. Even environment, I'm a pessimist because I think we care about the environment because we, like, as part of that existential thinking about death, and
Like you
that
mean in a
children, like it's a bit human
selfish
centered.
way?
Yeah, I definitely think environmentalists are thinking from a human perspective more so than
Yeah.
animals, and more so than like caring about a rock or a river as like having intrinsic value. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that comment that there's two camps. There's like the ethical vegan, and then there's the practical vegan, maybe. I don't know, like plant-based.
Yeah, I think as humans often do so well, they've managed to make something that originally wasn't really about them into something that is now more about them. I think humans are very good at doing that. I definitely think we've kind of seen this these kind of sub movements of veganism as being about something that is positive for human health. And there's some documentaries out there now. There was the recent one, the twin experiment. I think there was one called like What the Health or something a few years back. So there's been a few documentaries that really kind of bang on about the health benefits of veganism. And there's a lot of people out there now who call themselves vegan, but it's purely like for a health thing. It's purely from a health point of view. And then there's probably a smaller number of people who are vegan for the environment primarily, or call themselves vegan for the environment primarily. Obviously, and I think you as well, Mark, are probably of the opinion that you just can't be vegan purely from a health or environmental point of view, because there's lots of ways that we use animals that has nothing to do with health or environment. So it just doesn't really make sense. But yeah, there's definitely these humans have kind of made it not so much about the animals anymore. And it's partly the fault of a lot of vegans who I think it's like they've prioritized trying to get as many people kind of on board as possible. So they've kind of been telling people that you almost like you don't have to be vegan for the animals, you can be vegan for your health, or you can be vegan for the environment. And I think that that was kind of like a big push from vegans, probably vegans who cared about the animals, but they were trying to get people on board for like other reasons, in almost this kind of like desperation to try and make more people vegan. But I think unfortunately what that's doing is it's really watering down what veganism was meant to be about. And I think that there are all kinds of consequences of that are not necessarily good ones from an animal rights point of view.
Yeah, what do people think in the chat? Do you think that you can be vegan for anything but animal emancipation? Like, do you think that's A, possible, and B, valuable? And Steph, you definitely skipped to my next question, which was good. So we're on the same page. I had written down to ask you, like, why do you think the definition has been changed or adapted over time? And you're suggesting that it's to catch more people, to artificially inflate the movement, maybe, or
Maybe. Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the reasons. Yeah, I don't know. On the spot, I'm trying to think of, again, maybe it is just because humans also can, be a little bit self-centered, and maybe, I don't know, trying to just make it about them. What do you think?
yeah, I think if you look at a lot of social justice issues, not just with animals, but even with humans, um, people like extrapolating issues to reach their own life or something that they feel is valuable. So, with I guess the thing that comes to my head, I'm not heaps well versed on the history or what actually happened with the Black Lives Matter campaigns and things, but there was the like All Lives Matter rhetoric. So there was like an issue. People came up with the slogan Black Lives Matter. There was conversation around that. There was rhetoric around that. And then I suppose people tried to extend that to include themselves or include another group maybe that they thought was also being exploited in a type of way. So then it became, no, it's not Black Lives Matter, it's All Lives Matter. And it kind of shifted the conversation. Is that how you remember it panning out?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that is a little bit comparable to what's happening with veganism. Yeah, but yeah, that could be a good analogy. This comment by Contrarian, they're saying that they needn't be conflicting, I think, as in having a health message and having an animal rights message. I tend to focus more on the health benefits of plant-based diets and can reach people with that message. Doesn't interfere with those championing animal cruelty / environment. Yeah, I don't think it conflicts as such. Like,
It could.
um,
It could.
it could in some cases. Hang on, let's put a pin in that though. But
Okay.
I think it's more like if people want to be plant-based for their health and for the environment, like that's great. I think my concern is more when people have a misunderstanding of what veganism is really meant to be about, and they might call themselves vegan, but really what they mean is plant-based for health or plant-based for the environment. So like they call themselves vegan because they think veganism is just a diet, but then they're actually doing all this other stuff in their life that is not actually vegan. So to me, because I believe, I kind of agree with the Vegan Society definition, and I believe that it's essentially an anti-animal exploitation movement and definition. To me, doing something like, going to a zoo because you just want to see the animals, like to me, that's not vegan because you're contributing to animal exploitation, or I don't know, buying a leather handbag or something,
Yeah,
because
as I've
you
asked
like
before,
leather and you think it's good quality and that kind of thing. So someone who's plant-based for health and the environment, but if they call themselves vegan, but then they're doing all this other non-vegan stuff that's not diet related, that concerns me, because then I feel like that is watering down what veganism is meant to be about and turning it just into a diet. Like I don't think
like
plant-based diet
personal
and
preference.
vegan is the same thing. So
Yeah,
that's
it
my
turns it
only
into personal
concern.
preference, like lifestyle and like just you do you, hun, that kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
I wonder if I think I said it in a previous video, but I really wonder if they have vegan options at the zoo, and I wonder if they do they understand the irony of that?
I wouldn't know. I haven't been there for many years. Yeah, that is
That would be
interesting.
quite ironic, I think, because then someone could be like calling themselves vegan and going to the zoo and then eating plant-based food at the zoo. I'm sure they have chips, right? Hot chips.
I'm sure they do. Um,
I think what's important as well is we're kind of discussing semantics and definitions, and I think that has its place. And I think the important word is like, what are the consequences of going this way or that way? So um, that comment about keeping it 100% about the human health, like that's a stand. What do we think the consequences of that might be? Like, how does that play out into reality, into the future?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of already seeing that future right now. Like, yeah, like in a lot of vegan groups that I'm part of online, it's so common to see people like posting about stuff that to me is clearly not vegan, but they just don't see that at all. Like they think because they think vegan is mainly about the diet or even reducing suffering to animals rather than exploitation. Um, they do this stuff that's not vegan. For example, Mark and I, we both saw this post the other day in a vegan group where someone was pretty much boasting, I suppose you could say, boasting about this pet rat that they had bought, like purchased from a pet shop, and now are keeping in their home in a cage. And they obviously didn't see any problem with that. They probably didn't even think at all that it was not a vegan thing to do because they were posting about it in this vegan page. Hey, I bought this pet rat. Isn't she cute? Um, so examples like that. Whereas you and I, Mark, we commented and we were kind of saying like that's not really a vegan thing to do. Like you're literally buying someone to own them as a pet, contributing to the breeding and selling of more animals. He could have rescued an animal maybe if he had the capacity to look after an animal. He could have rescued one like from a shelter or something, or if he really only had space for a rat, like a smaller animal, he could have rescued from a rat adoption rat rescue group, which there are some of them around. So yeah, you've kind of got. I think we're seeing that future now, is what I'm saying, where we've got a bunch of so-called vegans who do things like this. They contribute to animal exploitation, and they don't even realize the problem with it. And that's just not veganism to me, and that's just very concerning to me.
Yeah, it's allowing people who are not agreeing with the principles of veganism to speak up for veganism. So it's someone that clearly doesn't understand the principles of anti-exploitation going on a vegan site and speaking as a vegan, promoting animal exploitation. And I think that's the difficulty with focusing on health as an activism tool, because it's not understanding the philosophy of veganism. It's kind of skirting around the outside. And I think there's a place for believing that people will get on the bandwagon because of health and then understanding the ethics later. But I think health should be seen as education and not as activism. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
Health is education, not as activism.
so you mean like it's okay for a vegan to like educate a non-vegan about why a plant-based diet is healthy? Healthy? Is that what you mean? Like it's okay to talk about the health benefits of it and educate people about the health benefits of it, but that maybe that shouldn't be the sole kind of focus of your discussion with them. Like, you can educate them about the health benefits, but they should also leave the conversation knowing that veganism is essentially about rejecting animal exploitation. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. So like this comment, if I convince a health-minded meat-eating friend that a plant-based is our natural diet and he changes his diet, this is net good. Like I think that's fine, but I believe that should be under more of an educational context. So like we are vegan because we disagree with animal exploitation, and then this is the practical extension of that is that we eat plant-based or vegan food, and this is the education behind it to support being able to do that, because there
Yeah.
might be people that have no idea, like they're not educated in food and health. So I guess being vegan might be seen as like impossible, but once you add the overlay of education, then it becomes possible, and then you have a moral obligation to be vegan. But I don't think we should be using health as an activism tool in that way. So like with the what was that show that you said? What the health or twins or something?
Yeah, well, there were two documentaries. The twins one was the most recent one.
Yeah, so I think it should be framed as, look, this is why we should be vegan and this is how to do it. Like this is possible, therefore you're morally obligated to be vegan.
You mean
Because
as in it should be framed as in like the animals is why we should be vegan?
and this is how we do it, or this is how it can be done. Because
Hmm.
you can be unhealthy eating plants. Now, we ate a pizza last night and a baklava, like and a mud cake.
Yeah, true.
Like
Yeah, that's true.
that's not a strong position. I don't think it's a strong enough position.
Yeah, that's another good point. I guess veganism, a vegan diet isn't necessarily always healthier. Like that's my belief anyway. I think that a non-vegan could have a diet that is healthier than a vegan. I've never really believed that eating meat is necessarily bad for you. I don't know, maybe eating certain types of meat or eating too much meat can be, but I don't necessarily think that it's like eating a little bit of meat is bad for your health. I've never really believed that. But so, yeah, I think that a non vegan diet could be healthier than some vegan diets. So that is kind of another concern with it. But I suppose I do generally believe that a whole foods vegan diet that is appropriately planned and meets all the nutrient requirements, I think that probably is healthier as long as, yeah, certain types of vegan diets could be healthier than certain types of non-vegan diets and the other way around.
Yeah, I would never die on the hill that being vegan is healthier. I'd never make that claim. I don't think it's necessary, and I think it takes a pretty like extreme position that is very hard to defend.
Yeah.
Some people are happy to because they have a lot of data, but I think there's a lot of data on the other team as well. Like, and it's just like
Mm.
he said, she said situation.
Yeah.
With this comment, I'll try and show it. This is interesting. Like, if we try a hardline approach and people don't go vegan, we've kind of lost the opportunity to reduce animal harm. Yes, I think you have to concede that a little bit, but I think as a part of a whole movement and not just in a vacuum, you you haven't you've hopefully educated them what veganism is, and so when they talk to vegans down the path, they have a better understanding. If they have children, those children will understand what veganism is. Even if they never go vegan, I think they can still hold other people accountable. I love telling the story of my dad, I think, is very, very, very far from going vegan for health or environment or animals, like very, very far. However, he understands veganism to an extent that when a vegan does something that's not in line with the vegan principle, he is capable of actually calling them out. And he told me a story of a lady whose daughter was vegan, and I'm putting that in inverted commas, and was riding horses on the weekend and doing equestrian. And my dad actually spoke to her and said, well, that's actually not vegan because vegans don't ride horses. So he's actually like contributing to spreading the message and being a vegan activist in a kind of loose sense, even though he's not vegan himself, but he understands the position. And I think we need to do that. We need to make it a moral position that people either agree with or disagree with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think if people understand the definition, even non-vegans, if non-vegans understand the definition and that it's about anti-animal exploitation, they can kind of educate people too, like in that example with your dad, or even my parents. My parents are not vegan. They're those people that are dietary wise anyway, very, very close to being vegan, but they're not vegan. Yeah, they both understand veganism though. They understand that it is anti-animal exploitation. It's not just a diet. You know, like they're very educated about it, obviously, because I've been talking their ear off about it for 13 years. But yeah, I think it's good if both vegans and non-vegans can understand that definition, because they can still educate other people. And I don't know, I just feel like, yeah, I guess, going back to what that someone was saying before about, reducing net suffering and all that, like, I guess to me, reducing that suffering, I guess this might sound crazy, but that's just not the only, like, reducing that suffering maybe in a shorter term sense is just not the only important thing to me. Like, I think we need to have some movement that is about rejecting animal exploitation. And I think in the long term to, reduce suffering in the long term, we need animal rights. And to get there, I think we need some movement that is about animal rights. And I guess I've always seen veganism as being that movement, but now it just seems to be kind of shifting a little bit, which is why that worries me. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I just feel like we need some movement that is very clear. This is the goal. This is what this means. This is what, like, veganism means. It means you don't support animal exploitation at all. It's not just a diet. Like, I think that would just be so good for the animal rights movement, and that would lead to reducing animal suffering in the long run, but more importantly, animals having rights in the long run.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that in Adelaide, particularly. That's where we're obviously streaming from. That's the name. Where a few years ago there were animal activists like promoting the principles of veganism, and now when you talk about veganism, the vegans are the ones like, shh, don't talk about it. Like you can't talk about veganism anymore. Like,
don't be too pushy.
yeah,
Like, everyone, don't gatekeep. They're saying, like, everyone should just be able to call themselves vegan as long as they have a mostly vegan diet or something. And it doesn't matter if someone buys a pet from a pet shop because they want the pleasure of having this little pet in their homes. It doesn't matter. They can still call themselves vegan. Like, there's this idea that, like, we shouldn't gatekeep. And so, yeah, I just think overall, like, the movement is being watered down a lot. And that's just very worrying to me, because I think, like, if we don't have a movement that is about animal rights, what do we have? Like, yeah. Like, if veganism isn't the movement that's about animal rights anymore, what do we have? Do we have an animal rights movement? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think I can't remember. Maybe I'll just be able to find it. A guy called Angelo Vignaroli, I think. He was saying that we can make lots of different arguments for veganism, like environment, health, we can make a lot of arguments that don't have a moral position, but like you can do that. That's possible. But the consequence of that is your whole movement loses its fire. It loses its power. It loses its motivations. It we're kind of it's just a free for all, right? There's no direction. Like I see this as like, a battle for good and evil, but it's like if you're just including everybody, then we're kind of back to square one, right? Like if everyone can do what they want, if they go vegan for their own health, they're not going to tell anybody else to go vegan, are they? Like if I'm on a particular diet and it's good for my health, like I don't have a moral position to tell other people to do the same thing. Like I eat oats for breakfast in real life. I'm not making that up. But I'm not gonna say that other people should eat oats for breakfast. Like there's no reason for me to get off the couch. There's no reason for me to research. There's no reason for me to debate. There's no reason for me to like try and convince people that they should be eating oats.
Yeah.
Like what's driving I guess the question is like what will drive the animal rights movement if it's just lifestyle, or if someone feels healthier eating this or that, like where's the motivation to actually work coming from? And by work I mean like activist, like
Yeah.
educate people.
And I think that's probably why well, I don't know about in other parts of the world. I guess online activism is becoming bigger with people that film themselves on the street and that kind of thing. But in real life, like the activism scene here now anyway is so dead. And maybe that is part of the reason, is because people are starting to like think of veganism as just more of like a personal choice, and we don't have the right to tell other people what they should do. It's just personal choice for my health or for the environment, or because I'm against animal cruelty. But I don't think that I have the right to tell other people to be vegan. So I think that is another consequence of it being watered down from an animal rights movement to other stuff. That's a consequence of it, is that we have less activism. People aren't as compelled to go out and try and convince other people to acknowledge that animals have rights and to see that and to be vegan themselves. So yeah, I think there's a lot of consequences to what is happening that we don't see. It's not it's complicated.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the fruit of that now, like in our city anyway. I don't know what other cities are like, but it's not the health vegans that are educating people,
Yeah.
like as far as I'm aware. With this comment here, thanks Contrarian, by the way, for commenting. This is like so much fun when we actually like talk to people and engage with people. This was the whole point of it. So yeah, this is really helpful, and it helps clarify our ideas and thoughts and challenges us as well. But this is interesting. Like Contrarian, if you're still watching, do you think that they're actually on the same team if they're eating plant-based but don't agree with the principles of anti-exploitation? Like, do you think they're actually fighting with us if they're eating plant-based?
It's a good question.
Because I think it's a different team. And my favorite word at the moment, because I was listening to a podcast with Carson Hughes and Angelo Vignaroli, and Angelo was saying a really good point that I've used it in other forms of like human examples and things, but they agree with the sentiment of veganism. So like they understand why people would go vegan for health, or they understand that we should give animals moral consideration. So there's like a sentiment there, but they don't agree with the values of it. They don't agree with the solution. They don't agree with the philosophy or the position of veganism. So it's like I think you can do that in a lot of cases, right? Like you can agree with like parts of it, but if you don't agree with the whole, then you're kind of not on the same team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I would be hesitant to call someone an ally if they were plant-based for health and maybe still engaged in other forms of animal exploitation. I would be very hesitant to call them an ally. So, yeah, this idea about turning away allies because they're not pure enough, I don't think that's really what's happening. I think it's more in my mind, there's people who think that animals should have rights, they're against animal exploitation, and then there's people who don't believe that. So, like, the only people to me that I think I would consider as allies are the people that are against animal exploitation and think that animals should have rights. So, if you're plant based for your own health, I don't really consider you as an ally. Like, if you don't reject all animal exploitation, and I think there's this idea of like purity, you're not being pure enough or being extreme, like an anti-animal exploitation movement is extreme or pure or whatever. I think we need something that is radical and extreme and pure. Like we
And
need that.
yeah, animal exploitation is extreme. Like you need to counter that, surely.
Yeah, and like in
Like
any
I
other place.
understand. Like I understand that. I get it. Like when someone doesn't go vegan, like it's frustrating, and you want to reduce suffering where you can. Like I understand that. Like I'm sympathetic to that, but I think as a movement, it becomes harmful. So maybe like one person, like people are going to do that anyway, wouldn't they? Like if we, I'm like my thoughts are like jumping around so much. Like with the what the hell stuff, that's plant-based education. So like if people are convinced about that, they're going to do that anyway. But it's
Yeah,
like that doesn't have to be the focus of veganism.
yeah. Yeah, I think like we need to hold our ground a little bit more for those of us who are actually completely against animal exploitation. We see it as a huge injustice and just a horrific thing. We need to stand our ground a little bit more, and I think keep up our message that is considered extreme. I think like just because people consider it extreme, that doesn't mean that the response to that should be, okay, well, let's water it down to make it more palatable for people. Like, I don't think that's going to be helpful in the long run. And I don't think that would be helpful with other human rights issues. Like, imagine if, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of another example. I guess we often use the Black Lives Matter example, but you could use, the examples of feminism or any other kind of human rights, social justice issues. They're not going to be like, yeah, we want, these rights for women. And then people at first are kind of like, no, we don't want to give women rights. Well, then imagine if the women's rights advocates were kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's just back off there. That's okay. We'll change our message. We'll water it down a bit. What if we can convince you that it's going to be good for you to like give women basic rights? Like, I don't know. I just don't think that the response to, I guess, when we're trying to advocate for animal rights and that is being met with, I think, I guess, understandably being met with some backlash. I don't think our response should be to then water down the message and make it about humans and kind of leave the animal rights stuff to the back burner. Like, I think we need some people who are just advocating for that extreme, extreme stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this comment is interesting. It is undeniable that if someone goes 100% plant-based, they're much more likely to be open to your vegan exploitation method. Why close this avenue of converts? I'm struggling to see, like, we're not against people going 100% plant-based. Like, I'm not sure I understand. Like, is it a dichotomy? Like, we only talk about animals or we only talk about plant-based food? Because Or is it about if someone's 100% plant-based, we call them vegan? Because going 100% plant-based and then calling them vegan, that creates a movement of people who think they're vegan but not, like the case with the rat. Like he doesn't understand. Like we still need the vegan education. Who's going to do the vegan education? Like where does that come in?
Yeah, even if someone goes plant-based for health, and then, you're saying they're much more likely to be open to a vegan anti-exploitation message. Well, someone's still got to be saying that message. And I don't know. I just think at least people who call themselves vegan should be the ones who are promoting that anti-exploitation message. And yeah, I mean, maybe look, we're not saying you can't talk about the health benefits,
Yeah.
but I just think that you can talk about the health benefits, but that shouldn't be the center of your message. Like it shouldn't be the only message. Like you should be talking about that in the context of veganism is an animal rights movement, and I guess the other thing is, I don't really see it as that extreme to say that using animals who are sentient beings as merely as resources and objects is wrong. Like, I don't see that as really that much of an extreme message. Or even if you were to say, because I think most people agree that harming animals unnecessarily is not a good thing, or at least morally questionable. I think most people agree with that. So the message of veganism, saying like, just stop harming animals unnecessarily, it's not that extreme, really, in a sense. Anyway, I got sidetracked.
Yeah, do you think it's artificially making it seem harder?
Yeah, I think when
Like,
vegans call veganism extreme, I do get a little bit concerned because I'm like, is it really that extreme though? Like it makes a lot of sense. It's very logical. Like I get that some people would see it as extreme because like non-vegans might see it as extreme because it's so different to what they're used to, but
mm,
I don't think it would help for us to be calling it extreme. Like I never refer to veganism as being difficult or extreme or anything like that because I just don't want to perpetuate that message.
yeah, it gives people like in my experience, I'm only speaking my own experience, but I feel like it gives people a way out. It's like, okay, you don't agree with these ethics. It's like we've got to force people to either agree or disagree. I think that's important because if they disagree, then they're going to have to take up a pretty difficult position to defend. So that's number one. Um, if we create a middle position or any other position, it gives them a way out. It gives them a way to sympathize and not be against exploitation. It creates free for all, I think.
Mm,
So like if we're talking like because we've done street activism, like if we're talking to people and they disagree, we've had some really good conversations where we help them along, we educate them a bit more about what we're talking about, we understand their perspective, we have a good conversation, we figure out the root cause of all these problems with this, which is animal exploitation. But you can imagine how that conversation would go very differently if we said, oh yeah, like it's pretty hard being vegan, or like insinuated that it was hard going vegan by not leaving it as a dichotomy, but saying, oh, there's like, if you just like, you can disagree with, sorry, you can agree that exploitation is fine. Like, we're not going to question that. Maybe just go plant-based or something. And then you're just doing as much as us. Like,
mm,
I don't know. I'm not articulating that very well.
that's okay.
But it's
I
just
just
kind
want
of,
to ask,
yeah.
is your laptop plugged in? Because it's getting a little bit glitchy. Is it on charge?
It's plugged in. I'll see if the PowerPoint is on.
Okay. I just know that sometimes that can be a reason for the laptop to get a bit glitchy if it's not plugged into power. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting, kind of complex situation, and I can see why people who are purely thinking about kind of just reducing suffering now kind of lens, you know, can see it as beneficial to let anyone kind of call themselves vegan, even if they're just kind of eating a plant-based diet or doing something to reduce their consumption of animals. But yeah, I don't know. I just, yeah, I'm just generally concerned about the watering down of the vegan movement, because I think it is the one movement that's meant to be about anti-animal exploitation, which I think is a little bit of a different lens to just a purely like reducing suffering lens. Like I think animal rights and trying to abolish animal exploitation, and to, we're abolitionists. We want to abolish the property status of animals, because we consider that to be exploitation. So that kind of animal rights, anti-exploitation lens, I think, is a little bit different, maybe also to the purely just anything to reduce suffering kind of lens. So I don't see veganism as a anything to reduce suffering movement. I see it as an animal rights, anti-exploitation movement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I had a thought, but it's just kind of jumped out of my mind as I was as I was commenting on in the feed. Um, yeah, it's fascinating, this like allies situation, because yeah, a lot of people want to be in the fight but are not fighting for the same thing or not fighting for anything. I think what I was going to say was, with this reducitarian type thing, um, like we are trying to reduce suffering. I think I'm pretty convinced that abolition is an attempt to reduce suffering, but it's an attempt to hold people accountable to a level of suffering that we can avoid.
Yeah, this could be a
Like,
whole nother video though,
yeah,
because it's
but
not,
like,
I think abolitionism is not just about reducing suffering. I think it's like, I think that is a part of it. And I think it definitely would result in far lower net suffering. But that's not just what it's about. It's also about intrinsic value and respecting the rights of an individual, because they're an individual with intrinsic value. So it's not
yeah,
about utility and, net
yeah.
suffering.
This is good because it shows that we can get along and make a channel and still disagree.
Do we
I
disagree though? I feel like we do agree on that.
well, like I agree with the intrinsic value, but it's like we only give them intrinsic value because they can suffer, right? We don't give a rock intrinsic value. I think the framework is a reduction in suffering. I think that's the framework. But I think abolition is creating rules around that to hold people accountable to that idea. Because if you just say our goal is to reduce suffering, then everybody is doing that. I didn't kick any dogs this morning. Like, I'm reducing suffering, or like I ate XYZ. I'm not reducing suffering. Like like I am reducing suffering, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. It's like, who's going to hold you accountable to that? And like, how do we function in a society where people can just reduce suffering at will and not
Yeah.
be held accountable?
And I
It's just
think,
a choice, right? We can choose to reduce suffering or choose not to reduce suffering. There's no
yeah.
there's no framework holding us accountable to that. So I think
Yeah. And
that's where abolition comes in, and it creates a framework where it tries to hold people accountable to that position.
yeah, but it is also about individual animal rights. But anyway,
Well, that's what the framework is built around, is like, we agree that
yeah,
giving animals
partly,
rights will
partly,
reduce the suffering
partly, yeah.
to
But
an
there's
appropriate
more. I think
degree.
there's definitely more to it philosophically, because even if you had I don't know. Anyway, I won't go into that because we do have to wrap up soon. But I think I was going to say something about oh yeah, I think we were talking with Carson about this, but I think there is also a little bit of like people can convince themselves of anything about reducing suffering, so they
Yeah,
might convince
I agree.
themselves that eating this steak is better because it if they convince themselves that eating the steak is better than eating plants from a field that resulted in animals dying in the crop farming or whatever. People can convince themselves of lots of things, and they may use that to justify animal exploitation. So I think that's another thing to be careful of. But Neil said we need people to understand that veganism is about animals. Many people literally don't know this. Yeah, I hope most people know that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people didn't realize that. And if they did, now we're starting to think that it is something about health or, I definitely think that it needs to be about the animals. Otherwise, what do we have? If veganism's not about the animals, what is? Like, we don't have another movement, not that I know of.
Yeah, I think people are in their bubble online as well, maybe because we speak to a lot of people out in the public, and there's a lot of people that do not understand veganism. Like that's just factual. Like there's so many people that do not understand veganism. They don't know what it is, like to the degree where they don't understand what the diet is. They don't understand what the position is. They don't understand anything. They're just like a clean slate,
True.
pretty much.
Yeah,
And I think we have the tendency to like be stuck in our vegan bubble online, where you're being suggested posts, or you have particular friends, or you watch certain things on YouTube, and it feels like everybody knows about veganism, and it feels like everybody knows, and they've decided not to be vegan, and that's it. And now we have to try a different method. But there are so many people that do not understand the position. They do not understand the anything.
Yeah.
Like there's so many
Yeah.
vegans that don't understand the vegan position. Like ask any of the major animal organizations what rights do you think animals should have, and they have no idea. Like they would just come up with some random the right to be have fresh water or some like BS like that. Like they do not understand veganism themselves. They don't understand the anti-exploitation either.
Yeah, or they
And
might
these are the
say
people
like,
that are supposed to be the biggest advocates for animals, and they don't have a conceptual understanding of veganism.
yeah. Or they might say like the right to not be like abused or something very vague like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do our next video about the abolitionist approach and talk about that a little bit. Like as in a case for animal rights, and that's a little bit more
Sticky.
complicated than simply just about reducing suffering.
Yeah, and then we can argue online about our position, which would be great.
Yeah, we might have slightly different positions about that. But yeah, I definitely think that would be an interesting discussion for next time. And it would probably answer a lot of the questions going on in the chat and everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for anybody that like had questions and comments in the chat. Like it's so helpful. Like even if we disagree with you or agree with you, it's just really good to be able to like figure out how to articulate our views. And I guess that's the whole point that we wanted to do these lives, so we could better articulate them and chat with other vegans and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always open to suggestions about topics that we can chat about. I don't think we ever have a shortage of topics that we can
Yeah,
chat
allyship.
about.
I'll write that down, allyship. I've got a little like Google Doc that I can write down ideas.
Yeah, write it down. That might be one.
We can headline Melanie Joy with that one.
Yeah.
She's an advocate of, am I right, contrarian, that Melanie Joy is the person that kind of headlines that idea?
Yeah, possibly. Like she came up with the idea of a vegan ally
I think
who's
it was her, but maybe she's borrowing it from someone else.
I
I'm not
think it
sure.
was maybe her, but I don't know. But that's meant to be someone who's not vegan, but they are somehow. Oh gosh, I could talk for hours about that in itself, so I won't go there.
Well,
Should we?
contrarian, you would love Melanie Joy if you don't know her. Like by the sounds of it, you're quite similar.
But we don't love Melanie Joy. We respect anyone that is saying something about animals, but we don't always agree.
I
Anyway,
sympathize with her position, but I don't agree with her methods or
yeah,
her position.
we should do. Yes, okay. Let's do another video about allyship. Allyship, I think, not
I don't know
allyship.
how to pronounce
Allyship.
it. We will
Um,
do some research how to pronounce that word.
and yeah, and we can also do a video about the abolitionist approach. All right, should we just do like closing thoughts, like 20 seconds each after the chat we've had today, what our closing thoughts are? I can go first. So we discussed the definition of veganism, which has always, ever since its conception, it has always been about being anti-animal exploitation. And the definition today still states that it's about trying to avoid or exclude as much as possible and practicable the exploitation of animals. We didn't even really get into that part of it about what's possible and practicable mean, because I think
Yeah,
we'd intended to.
practicable versus practical.
I think we intended to talk about that a bit. We didn't even get around to it, so that can be another video. But anyway, so yeah, closing thoughts for me. I still very much agree with that definition. I think that to me, veganism is really a philosophy that rejects all animal exploitation on the basis of animals having rights. And so the philosophy informs your behavior. So then a vegan is someone who holds that philosophy to be true, and therefore it impacts their choices, so they don't support animal exploitation in any way as far as is possible for them. So that doesn't just include diet, that also includes other products they buy, whether it's clothes, furniture, anything
Pets.
else, wherever they can possibly avoid purchasing animal products. It also includes not using animals for entertainment, like SeaWorld or the zoo or horse racing or any kind of animal racing and that kind of thing. It includes rejecting the use of animals for testing, like biomedical testing, cosmetic testing, anything like that. So basically, to me, veganism is a philosophy that rejects all animal use and exploitation. I think that we would do well to keep it that way, to keep the definition that way, and to ensure, like, educate people and ensure that they know that that is what it means. And otherwise, if we're not going to do that and we're going to water it down to mean something else, well, we need something else then that is purely about anti-animal exploitation to replace the word vegan. Like we need something. I hope that it can continue to be the word vegan because that's what it was originally meant for. But yeah, I guess that's my closing thoughts. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I think I like the first half of the definition. I think we can just get rid of the by extension promotes the use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of humans, blah 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 blah. Like I like the bit that focuses on the exploitation. Um, Maybe there needs to be like a pseudo definition where you have like the definition, like the principle, the philosophy, and then the pseudo definition is like what the application of that is. So I guess that's maybe what they tried to do, but I think people focus on the application and forget about the philosophy, and then they can just interpret the application however they want, really. Like it kind of falls apart a little bit. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. I do like a lot of what Leslie Cross said. Like he seemed to be understanding the exploitation and things and had like a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah, and I guess yeah, the just to add the reason why I think that is because I do think that that would be the best pathway to lead towards animals having rights. I think we need a movement that is about animal rights in order to achieve animal rights. So that's kind of a summary of why I think that we need to keep veganism to be about animal rights and the non-use of animals, because that's the way that we're going to actually be able to achieve animal rights. If we don't have a word for anti-exploitation of animals, then that's not going to be as helpful. All right, cool. Shall we wrap up there?
Yep. Just acknowledging the last two comments. Like, yeah, that's interesting. Like the name for what it is. I suppose the definition would probably be similar. But yeah, it's interesting. Like that we don't have the word animal in the name. It's kind of like maybe it's a bit old school.
Yeah, maybe we just do need a rebrand and a new name for people that are anti-animal exploitation. It's too long to say anti-animal. Oh, I'm anti-animal exploitation. Like, it's easier to just say I'm vegan.
Yeah, it's good as a name.
All right, we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in.
Same time next week.
Yep, same time next week in Adelaide here, 9 a.m. Saturday for us. But yeah, we'll be back same time next week. All right, bye.